Mr. President, I rise to talk about the Coast Guard Authorization Act of 2010, which we have passed back to the House with amendments, and hopefully they will pass later this evening. And it will be the first time we have gotten this legislation authorization passed, and the work that we have been doing for the last 4 years on reforming the Coast Guard's deep water acquisition program from the mistakes that have been made in the past and setting on a new course will actually become law. As the President knows, the Coast Guard is a vital agency for us in the Pacific Northwest, everything from maritime safety to protecting our environment to our fisheries and the important missions that they carry out, and obviously making sure that the Coast Guard has the tools that it needs to get the job done is very important. I want to thank Senator Snowe, Senator Rockefeller, and Senator Hutchison for their hard work, and for members on both sides of the aisle for working on this legislation. And while I said that it has important acquisition reforms, and I want to mention a few of those because obviously the deep water program for its acquisitions ran into many problems. But first and foremost, the Coast Guard will return to its appropriate competitive procurement practices. This legislation ends what was an industry self-certification process, and it codifies a very rigorous process that the Coast Guard should have with the Major System Acquisition Manual, and establishes the right leadership and oversight for that. And an important aspect of, I think, all procurements related to acquisitions of this size, analysis of alternatives conducted by an independent third party. But, Mr. President, this legislation also has other important safeguards for oil spill prevention and for fishing vessel safety. And as the President knows, because one of the provisions in this legislation is to require a tug escort of double-hulled tanks in Prince William Sound, something that the presiding officer, the senator from Alaska, Senator Begich, and Senator Murkowski both asked be included in the bill. This is important legislation, as we can see from the Gulf incident and from incidents before. We obviously have to have large vessels escorted in and out of sensitive areas, and so I appreciate the leadership from the senators from Alaska in this legislation. It also adds new protections to the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary off of the state of Washington, and help making sure that it is protected from vessels that pose an oil spill threat. It also extends the important oil spill response assets through Washington's very vulnerable Strait of Juan de Fuca, making sure that it too is more protected and has more resources to deal with incidents in the case of an oil spill. And finally, there is a new requirement for fishing vessel safety, designed to protect the life and welfare of those fishermen who risk their lives to bring seafood to our tables. It requires that large fishing vessels get a safety certification from independent third parties, and it mandates that smaller fishing vessels meet the same Coast Guard safety standards as recreation vessels. This is important, Mr. President, because we know that our fishing vessels take great risk in providing catch to us and the product that they bring to market, but it's important that we do so in a safe and responsible fashion, and having this type of independent safety requirements will be much needed. And finally, it allows the Alaska-Washington Pollock fleet to replace their boats to meet the new safety standards that help ensure this very important fishery is a safe one. As the President knows, the fishing fleets for Washington and Alaska are large operations. The pollock fishery alone is over $1 billion industry, and making sure that these vessels operate in a safe manner is critical for our industries to continue to succeed. So I thank the President for his input, and for my colleagues on the Coast Guard Subcommittee of the Commerce Committee and the committee at large for their help in getting this legislation passed. As I said, it has been nearly 4 years in the making to get this important legislation through Congress. It comes at a time when we continue to want the Coast Guard to have the best resources to meet the missions and requirements of their job, but to do their acquisition in a responsible way, to right the wrongs that have been through the Coast Guard acquisition process at the beginning of the Deepwater program, and to make sure that there is oversight and third-party evaluation of that, and to make sure, as I said, Mr. President, that this bill establishes new laws on oil spill prevention and on fishing vessel safety so that we can continue to operate in these pristine waters in a safe and effective manner. I thank the President, and I yield the floor.